Okay. Hi, everyone. I'm Justin Dry, one of the founders of Vinomofo. Welcome. I'd like to begin by acknowledging the traditional custodians of the land on which we meet today and pay my respects to their elders past and present. I extend that respect to the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples here today. Okay, I'm super excited about this event and that so many of you are joining us tonight. A huge welcome and thank you to you all, and to everyone that made tonight possible, including my team and of course our special guest, Greg from Lake Breeze. I was actually really happy to hear that Lake Breeze had won the Best Value Award. Certainly well deserved. They deliver some awesome wines at incredible value. I also do have a real soft spot for Lake Breeze. We actually first worked with them well before Vinomofo. We had a few other online wine businesses before this one. One of them was called the Great South Australian Wine Adventure, which later evolved into the Great Australian Wine Adventure. And Lake Breeze was actually one of our early supporters of those projects. And so visiting them back then and tasting through their wines is one of my really fond memories from early part of my career. So I'm super excited to have them here. So firstly, huge congratulations to team at Lake Breeze for their win. I'm really happy for you all, and I'm really happy to be working with you tonight. All right, that's enough from me. I'm sure everyone is thirsty. I certainly am. So I'm going to hand over to Beth from our team, who is your official host tonight. Have a great tasting, everyone. I can't wait to try the wines. Over to you, Beth.
Great, thank you very much, JD. And yeah, nice to see you, the face anyway. So welcome everybody. My name's Beth Bicknell and I'm a wine buyer at Vinomofo. I'm here tonight with Greg Follett, who is the winemaker at Lake Breeze, as JD said, winners of the 2022 Halliday Best Value Winery. How are you going, Greg?
I am very good, just unmuted. Thanks for having me here. Hope you're well.
Oh, thank you. I am very well. I'm very excited to taste these three wines with you. So welcome everybody. I'm going to share my screen again so you can see the tasting order of the wines for tonight. And while you have a look at that order, maybe pour yourself some wine and start sniffing that first Shiraz, just going to run through a little bit of housekeeping for tonight. So you will all be muted tonight, just so you know. We do have a staff member who is designated to questions. So if you do have any questions this evening, please send them to her. It's just the questions little name you'll see there as you go to chat, or you can also share your questions with everybody. And we'll see how many of those we can get to by the end of the session. We will be using a couple of polls tonight. So if you see a question pop up on your screen, feel free to jump in and answer those. And then, of course, stay on until the end of the session to gain the maximum, have all your questions answered. But also, we've got some promo codes that we'd like to share. So that will be right at the end of the session. All right. So going to do what I always do with the South Australians. It's called the South Australian Icebreaker questions. So you ready, Greg?
Fire away.
Fantastic. First one, it's simple. Port or Crows?
It's neither with me. I'm a Hawthorn barracker from South Australia, but growing up with Langhorne Creek playing footy, we were always the Hawks. So it was Hawthorn for me, and not a bad team to barrack for, I must say, over the last 30 years or so.
Nice. And you played for the Langhorne Hawks, did you?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, the whole family's got a very long association with the Langhorne Creek Hawks. Yeah, so I played a couple of hundred games, I suppose, in the A grade back in the day.
Oh, nice. I mean, if Robin can find some photos, we can definitely do some screening of those. Okay, number 2. What is your favourite food land?
Favourite food land. Now, I don't do a heap of shopping, but when I do go into Adelaide and coming down Glen Osmond Road, definitely we'll stop in at Frueville. The Frueville food land is probably the best one in the state, I think.
Okay, fantastic. When borders are open, everyone get over there to do a little shop, either Frueville or Pasadena. These places will change your life. And final question, Shiraz, Syrah or Shiraz?
I don't say Syrah, but I've been known to use both Shiraz Shiraz, not Shiraz, Shiraz or Shiraz with the Z on, the Z off, depending on my mood, or I think I say Shiraz Cabernet, but Cabernet Shiraz, I'm not sure. It's a
Awesome, thank you. Nice little insight for you. And just to make sure everyone is on the same page, the first wine for tonight, that is the section 54 Shiraz. So Langhorne Creek, or I've been told it's the creek, not the Langhorne, but it's the creek. Would love to hear a little bit more about it. I've got a map I'd like to share, so I'll do that. And if you wouldn't mind, telling us a bit about the geography, the climate, that sort of thing. And we did have a question about, now what was that about? The Bremer flooding. So if you'd like to chat about that too, I know that would be, well appreciated by someone who gave us that question. So I'll let you go ahead.
Okay. As you can see on the map, I know some of you have probably been to Langhorne Creek, but we're only an hour southeast of Adelaide. You'll see McLaren Vale to our west, probably 45 minutes away, where Barossa's about an hour and a half north. And between us and Adelaide is the Adelaide Hills. So basically to drive, I drove to Adelaide this morning, took me an hour, just up over the hills and into Adelaide. So we're actually on a floodplain. There's two little rivers that flow down from the Adelaide Hills into Lake Alexandrina, the Bremer and the Angus, which will flood in the wintertime most years. We are actually able to utilise that water when it comes down by holding it up with banks and levees, letting it soak on the vineyards for 24, 48 hours, saturates the soil, and that's how a lot of our older vines is the only irrigation they have for the whole year. There's a shot of, actually that was this year. This year, some old Cabernet as you come down our driveway, which is raised, as you can imagine. But the other, I suppose, really thing about Langhorne Creek and Lake Breeze is the fact, if you go back to the map, is the fact that we have these cooling breezes which comes over the Southern Ocean across Lake Alexandrina, and hence the name Lake Breeze in the town. It's like the Fremantle Doctor. Basically every summer afternoon, 2 o'clock, literally set your watch to it. The breeze comes in and just keeps us that bit cooler. So we already had bud burst probably earlier than Barossa and McLaren Vale, but we'll be picking 2 to 3 weeks later than those guys. So it's a real for us to be able to develop flavour, and especially be able to grow Cabernet really well as Shiraz down here. That breeze is super important for us.
Fantastic. Very exciting to see that 40% of the people that have responded to the poll have actually been to Langhorne Creek. Much better than when we did our dress rehearsal with the staff, and I think only 10%. So great.
And I pressed yes on that one, so that could have skewed the numbers as well.
Absolutely nothing like those, skewing the stats. I did have a couple of questions for you. The Langhorne Creek wine region, how would you say that's changed over, say, the past few decades?
Oh, it's changed hugely. It's still just a grower region mainly. So most of the fruit still ends up into the big company blends. Probably 20% goes into a Langhorne Creek label. But in 1990, I know we used to quote there was 1,000 acres or 400 hectares in the I suppose the new measurements. Now there's 6,000 hectares, 15,000 acres under vine, and most of that growth happened through the 90s and early 2000s, bringing water. We were basically reliant on the Bremer for the flooding, Bremer and the Angus, and that was really the only water under a little bit of underground water. So water being brought from Lake Alexandrina and the Murray sort of opened the region right up. I mean, there's some great soils here and plenty of plenty of water now, so that's sort of just has allowed that area to grow so much. Cellar doors, there's now 7 or 8. I think there's 7 that are open. In 20 years ago, 30 years ago, there was only one until we opened. We were the second one opened here in the district. So yeah, that's grown as well. And just, I suppose there's more branded wine out there and more awareness slowly coming to Langhorne Creek. We're spoiled in South Australia, as you are in Victoria, with a lot of good wine regions close by. So people are sort of gradually starting to learn about Langhorne Creek and realising that some pretty special wines and great value, obviously, as well.
Oh, absolutely. When I came to visit, I was driving from the Adelaide Hills. That was kind of the route that I took. And it's a stunning drive. And as you sort of get out of the hills and it gets a little bit flatter and the sky's a bit bigger, it's a really, really relaxing place to visit. Yeah, it's really great. And I guess with, so few cellar doors, you could get your head around the region in maybe a couple of days and sort of visit everyone. But if someone's got 24 hours in the region, obviously they're going to come to Lake Breeze. What else would you suggest that they do if they do have just a limited time frame?
Yeah, well, they can spend a fair bit of time here enjoying lunch and relaxing here all afternoon. But it'd be remiss of me not to mention Bleasdale, who have been here since year dot, really, since the 1850s. So much history those guys have got, this big, beautiful old red gum press to see. So I definitely recommend dropping into Bleasdale, some great wines and great value wines as well. And then you can probably stop over at the pub at the end of the day, but maybe before that, sneak into Bremerton. They've a new tasting room there. There's some new gins on offer as well. So there's something, well, maybe not something for everyone, but there's certainly something for most people to be able to spend the day here without any problems.
Right, fantastic. By the way, everyone, as you're drinking, I'm sure you're, having a bit of a think and a taste of these wines. Feel free to pop any tasting notes into the chat because we'd love to hear what people have to say about all the wines. And of course, go Hawks. We've got a couple of those comments there. So the family, the famous Follett family of Langhorne Creek, there seems to be many of you, and you're all working at Lake Breeze, it seems, and great reputation around the area, of course. I will share a couple of photos, but would love to hear about the history of the family. And I know you were talking to our staff the other day about your mum's vintage staff meals. I'd love for you to share that story again because it really shows what a close-knit family and operation you are there at Lake Breeze.
Yeah, so I suppose our family's been here in Langhorne Creek since 1850, and the Folletts themselves was my great-grandfather sort of married into, I suppose, the maternal side of their family tree in the 1880s and planted the first vines in the 1880s. And we always had a dairy farm as well. When I was growing up, we still had the dairy farm. We were balancing vineyards and cattle. And so the wine side of things really only eventuated in the late 80s. I went off and studied at Roseworthy, and we started making some wines in 1987, opened the cellar door in 91. You can see here in front of you, mum, dad, and my two brothers, who are, I suppose, we're the five shareholders in the business. My younger bald brother on the left there is, I hope he's not watching, I think his son might be, is Tim. He runs the vineyard, he's vineyard manager. My other brother on my left on that photograph, I suppose is general manager of business, sort of works with the sales, etc. Dad's still very involved. We've still got a few cattle around. He still enjoys playing with them and putting his two bobs worth in with everything that we're doing. And mum still cooks lunch. I'm sort of almost embarrassed to say, still cooks lunch for myself and my brothers most days. And during vintage, she cooked breakfast and lunch, not for only us, but also the workers as well. So it's one thing that keeps them coming back. They sort of have to have Marlene, or Naughty Nanny as she's known to all of her grandkids, have to have her eggs and bacon for breakfast, or they won't be coming back for vintage anymore. So certainly a tight-knit group. We've also got obviously my wife Robin, who's been working in the business for 25 years and marketing, etc. She actually is in that photo there. I'm pointing, but no one can see me pointing, I don't suppose. My sister-in-law, my nephews have my nephew Tyler has been doing cellar door in the vineyard, and he's studying winemaking at the moment. I've had maybe 3 or 4 other nephews that have come through vintage. So yeah, very much a family business. Have I bored everyone to tears yet? With
No, we've actually got 119 people. That's me, you, and 117 of our closest friends, and probably 2 people in some rooms. That's very exciting indeed. It's not a boring story at all. And someone did just ask, why the duck? Sorry,
taking a sip there, just to wet the whistle. we do. I mean, I was only thinking, I came here tonight, I snuck home to see my son for a while. I was looking out at our swamp, which is out of my back door, which is about 500 metres from the winery here. And there's duck families everywhere, baby ducks everywhere. There was spoonbill. Drove down, popped the bin out. There's a kangaroo with a joey just there. It's just a beautiful night here and so idyllic. And yeah, we've got ducks that breed here. So ducks and red wine, you know, it was an idea that Dad come up with in the 80s, and we've stuck with it. So yeah, I think it works well.
Nice. There's a really lovely little comment that Ashwin's made here that says, I used to like Shiraz, but I stopped enjoying the variety 5 or so years ago. This wine, though, is really nice. Maybe I'll get back into Shiraz. I think that speaks possibly to beautiful fruit concentration in this wine, but a light touch. It's not overpowering. It's not something that you can't drink alone. You certainly don't need food to enjoy a glass of that. So I'd love for you to tell us about this first wine, the Section 54 Shiraz, and possibly even touching on how that Langhorne Creek Shiraz style sits in a broader South Australian context. Obviously, you've got, you know, the big Barossa style and maybe the little bit more soft and juicy McLaren style. So please tell us all about this Shiraz.
Okay, Shiraz in Langhorne Creek. So we sort of touched on climatically how we're that little bit cooler, but we're obviously still warm enough to be able to ripen these reds without any problems. But they're ripening a little bit slower, and also we have these beautiful rich soils down here as well. So we're able to get this depth, this richness, this softness, you know, that sort of classic sort of chocolatey, plummy sort of notes that you get in Shiraz. But we're also able to have, I suppose, this brightness, drinkability and elegance in the wine as well. This wine itself, well, Section 54 refers to the block we are on here. It actually utilises what I call Floodplain Shiraz, which is, I suppose, the much older vines, which is that big sort of round, full, sweet fruited, and it blends some of our off floodplain, which is on some lighter sort of sandier soils where the wines are darker. There's beautiful sort of aromatic spiciness and length to those wines. So blending those two together. And this wine has maybe 20% new French oak. So it's soft and juicy and easy to drink, but at the same time, I think it sort of straddles that warm and cool climate style. So hopefully it's a bit of an all-rounder that's going to please a lot of people.
It's great. And I think like that, the tannin, the fruit, the acid are all sitting so beautifully together. And as a 2019, there's that freshness, but you can see how it's just going to maybe sit in the same sort of spot for a couple of years and then just mellow out really, really nicely.
Absolutely.
Toby's saying it's very silky and balanced. Toby, I think you are a wise person. Feel free, guys, to pop in any other sort of Shiraz specific questions there. I don't know why it sort of takes me to Hawke's Bay a little bit, maybe somewhere between like a Barossa and a Hawke's Bay. There's just that darker sort of fruit. You know, it sort of nudges it serious with herbaceous and earthy notes, but then there's like a real nice juicy like red currant lift that sort of brings you back, and you're like, oh, that nice acid to just keep you going back to the glass. It's great.
I think that's the thing with that sort of straddling that cool and warm climate is you get those red fruits and you sort of get those dark fruits in there as well. And there's a little bit of spice and a little bit of herbaceousness. So there's a little bit, you know, I suppose that's the complexity we're trying to get in with blending, and you'll hopefully see that in the next couple of wines. There's probably more blending involved even than this wine, but this would have at least 4 or 5 different blocks, and also obviously, you know, different oak types and that in the winery. So we're looking at as many options as I can have from a blending point of view, which I think, you know, the strengths I have here as a winemaker is firstly, you know, the great fruit I get to choose. We don't use all of our own fruit. We still sell some. So I sort of call it the John West principle, you know, keep the best and sell the rest. So we definitely pick the eyes out of the fruit that comes in here, but also we keep these blocks separate for 15 months or so before I look at blending. And I think that's where I suppose the value side of it comes in as well. I'm fairly anal. I'm not sure that's the perfectionist perhaps is a better word. I'm trying to make sure that we're over delivering, and if it's not quite good enough, I'll put it into a product that's lower or sell it off to someone else.
Yeah, gotcha. It's a luxury. And I think also the other luxury is the old vines, which, you know, vines that are sort of at 60, 70 years old, that is, you know, it's not the norm for Australia. It's probably not even the norm for a lot of places in the old world. So, yeah, maybe some depth, complexity that I certainly see in the wines is coming from that. Jumping into the chat quickly, half of the people are like, how long is this going to age for? And the other half of the people are like, I'm just going to drink it right now. But what are you, two questions. First question, just around aging potential. And second question, is 2019 a pretty, like, is this a usual year for this wine, or is this sort of a touch lighter, touch bigger? Where does it sort of sit?
It probably sits in slightly sort of prettier, more floral, lighter, more elegant than some of the previous vintages. But it's, I suppose, in some way, that's how the style's evolving over the last 10 years, which is sort of going in lines with the Australian palate to a degree. Obviously, we're vintage dependent in how we do that. But from an age-worthy side of things, our wines never cease to amaze me. How, you know, we've been making for 30 years. I mean, definitely anything with Cabernet is this last, you know, everything I've ever made is still drinking quite well for 30 years on. Shiraz-based wines and this wine, I think, is probably more that 8 to 10 year prospect. But I wouldn't, you know, if you left it for 15 years plus, I'm sure it's still gonna be a really interesting drink. There's enough freshness, brightness, there's enough fruit, there's enough tannin to carry that, and I'm always making sure there's enough acidity, enough line in the wines to sort of age them as well. I think it's sort of a trait of our wines, that brightness, and the fact there is that sort of balance of acidity there to sort of balance that sweet fruit.
Nice. Question just came in regarding the weather and impacting the finished product, which I'm sure it does. Would you expect consistent result for the next vintage? So great question. I would like to add on to that question. Does having access to so much fruit and being able to sort of pick and choose, does that help with that consistency?
It certainly does. I mean, it is one of the strengths here of Langhorne Creek in general. You talk to other winemakers from other regions who utilise the fruit here. It's the consistency here. Langhorne Creek's often been described as the mid-palate of Australia. It's put into these blends because there's always this lovely mid-palate fleshiness in Langhorne Creek wines. I've digressed a little bit. I can't remember what the question was. Sorry.
How does the weather impact the finished product, and would you expect consistent results for the next vintage, which you sort of touched on?
Yeah, I mean, we don't, obviously, compared to like a Treasury wine estates where they're blending from every different region and so many different batches, we perhaps can't make a Canunga Hill or, you know, something that's going to literally be a recipe taste that's the same every year. But that's sort of the beauty of it. The wines are, you know, coming from me, but we've definitely had customers who've come and sort of, it doesn't matter what vintage you're at. We've built up a reputation for, you know, the last 15 or 20 years that, you know, people trust the label now. So they trust, there might be wines they prefer over others, but every year I'm not going to put my label on it if I don't think it's worthy of being in that label. So that's, you know, I suppose it's a tick of assurance for people to have a look, but, you know, you don't want another wine to taste like this. I don't want the next vintage to taste exactly the same as this. You know, it's got to taste a bit of that vintage, a bit of, you know, a bit of the place here and what the weather conditions were that year. So whilst the style will be similar, it will definitely be different.
Yeah. And talking about, so you're talking about Penfolds, I'm thinking Grange, I'm thinking like $800 bottles of wine. Do you have one in you? Is there like a couple of barrels that you're aging to perfection? And I know you've done a lot of vintages. It could be a multiple vintage blend, and you're just going to do like the statement, really, really heavy bottle, really expensive wine, maybe just call it the Greg. Is it in the pipeline?
Maybe at my funeral they might do one or something, named it once I'm gone. The closest we have to that is what we call the Drake, which Robin might grab a bottle and put it in front of you. But it's our most expensive wine, which is $80, which it's basically a 2-barrel blend, the best Cabernet and Shiraz generally of the year, occasionally a little bit of Malbec, which is a little bit of a regional sort of specialty and secret in a lot of blends here. But that's probably as close as we get to it, but it's $80, not $800. But feel free to open it alongside Grange, and I think it'll stand up half okay.
Absolutely, and you can buy 10 of them.
That's right.
I think, look, that's such a really appealing thing about Langhorne Creek as a region. It's a fill up your boots sort of place where, you know, you can spend $80 on the flagship wine, but you can also, you know, get a dozen Bernoota and just enjoy them every day of the week. And it's really nice to see that it is a very, very accessible region in general. And then obviously the star in the region to win this award. It's awesome. Speaking of Bernoota, we are moving on to that am I saying it right? I think I am.
Yeah, just how it looks. There's nothing secretive about it.
It didn't strike me as a French word, yeah. So it's the Bernoota Shiraz Cabernet. This one is also a 2019. So if that's not already in your glass, please pour yourself a glass and we can get to talking about that in a moment.
Yeah, so I'll probably just, while there's a bit of silence there while people are pouring the glass, I know I'm going to get asked what Bernoota means, so I'll get that out of the way now while everyone's pouring it. It's the original name of our house on the property here, so I'm pointing over here because it's just over here where mum and dad still live and where I was brought up, and it's an Aboriginal term here meaning camp among the gum trees. And if you've been here, we're just surrounded, got the river that comes around us, so that's what Bernoota means. And obviously that Aboriginal term, and you know the Narrandjeri people who were here. We've got some canoe trees and that through our swamps, and you know they certainly spent time through here, you know, prior to us coming along. So it's nice to be able to honour that.
That's great. So I had one little question, which I'm sure you'll answer as you jump into this wine. But yeah, the blend, of course, it's that classic Aussie blend. How is it determined every year? That would be my question, but I'll have a look at what everyone else is saying on the chat and make sure most of our questions are covered.
Yeah, no dramas. So it's basically a 60-40 Shiraz Cabernet blend. Early 90s when I first started making it was more Cabernet dominant, but we found that sort of needed a little bit longer in the bottle before we release. So we sort of find that blend works really well, especially here in Langhorne Creek. That you know, that sweet fruited Shiraz with a depth and richness to it, and then that Cabernet sort of brings the line and length, you know, aromatics and longevity. The beauty with this wine, as I said, it doesn't cost you much over $20, and we've got wines. I pulled a 92, the first one I ever made out the other day, and it's still drinking really, really well. So it's has that benefit, I suppose, of being a young, you know, as a young wine, I think, which all Langhorne Creek wines do to a degree, has that drinkability, which is really important. But also, yeah, sell it away, and it can be really, really surprising.
Got a good question here, which says, how much influence does the personality of the winemaker have compared to the personality of the grape? And you told me that you've been the winemaker there for about 3 decades, which would say that sort of consistency there through you. Yeah, is it nature or nurture? What do you reckon?
I think it's mainly nature. I mean, definitely we can shape a wine to a degree. I mean, this Bernoota is much more traditional, you know, that traditional South Aussie blend, the old claret sort of style. And it's definitely, you know, it's American oak, you know, which is the only product we do which has new American oak. It's definitely a lot less than there was 5 to 10 years ago, where we're bringing back that amount of American oak in there. But it's still important because we've got so many people over the years who love this wine. You know, they come in, as you said, they come and fill their boot up. And so we don't want to throw the baby out with the bathwater and change the style completely. So it's more sort of, it's probably a little more elegant than it used to be, but it's certainly that much more traditional style, you know, sweet fruited. There's definitely some American oak there, but it's still that really nice line as we speak about. One of the great things, I'm not sure when you're here at Cellar Door, is that we have this competition called Where's Your Bernoota Been? It sort of started with a customer who came in who found the wine somewhere in Vietnam or something strange like that, and we came up with this idea, which we did as a one-off. But now people, not so much through COVID, but we've got photos. I know they're on our website, but they're here on the Cellar Door as well, of people having Bernoota in different parts of the world, from the Antarctica to Mongolia to all the weird and wonderful places. So it is a really special wine for a lot of people.
It's so nostalgic, that idea of travel, you know. It's a beautiful thing. I don't know how I was so lucky, but I did get to visit between Victorian lockdowns and see you guys. So yes, I'll have a think about in my 5-kilometre radius where I can take my Bernoota and pop that up on social media over the next day or so. Lots of really nice comments there. Someone was saying how the Bernoota, they've been following it for quite a few years, and that wine just hasn't skipped a beat, which is really lovely. Someone's just said, my first vintage, 1994, and I agree that Bernoota and Cabernet definitely go the distance, which is great. Someone's asked, what percentage new oak?
Yeah, probably these days, what this wine does, obviously it's mainly the old vine fruit on the property, mainly floodplain fruit. Comes in, has, you know, the Shiraz is normally 7 or 8 days in fermenter, open fermenters. The Cabernet is a little bit longer, maybe 10 to 12 days in fermenter, and it goes straight into barrel pretty much to final fermentation. We'll put it in initially around 30% new American oak, and then some 1, 2, and 3-year-old barrels as well. It'll stay in there for the first, well, generally goes in March, April, and then it comes in, and in February, I'll take it out of those new barrels and we'll go into older wood. So it has, sorry, a long-winded answer, but it's probably over the period of 20 months it spends in barrels. It's probably only 10 to 15% absolute new for that whole period, but it's, at some periods it's in as much as 30% new oak. That's
nice. It's interesting. I do a lot of the staff training at Vinomofo with the other buyers, and I take care of Spain. And of course, they've got quite the passion for oak in Spain, especially in Rioja and American oak. And, you know, for some people, they're sort of steering away for it. There's a real halo around French oak, but American isn't so on trend. But I always say to the young people, I'm like, you know, as long as the fruit quality is there, then American oak can work very, very well. And I don't see it sticking out in this wine at all. It's just, it's toasty, it's warming, it's great. And that's, what is that, like $22 retail, right?
That's right, yeah.
That's like, that is insane. And you're saying that it's like the old vine. So that's just, yeah, absolutely magical. Really, really good. More questions. Why is the American oak better for the blend than French oak for the straight Shiraz? If you'd like, kind of talked about that, maybe touch on. It's
not definitely better. It's just a different style we're making. So it was a counterpoint. The Bernoota we've always made, the Section 54 is a newer, 2008 was the first one. I suppose that's not super new anymore, but we wanted to make some of our old vine Shiraz with French oak. They have a different style, so it's slightly more feminine compared to the feminine sort of elegant style of the Bernoota. Hopefully it's still got some elegance and brightness and that in it, but at the same time it's a little bit more robust sort of style, and we want to sort of stick to that traditional style with our Bernoota.
Nice. And yeah, from the poll, the question was, what is your desert island red? Very close. 59% of people said Shiraz. 41% of people said Cabernet. I am glad that you mentioned Malbec, because I drank a bottle of that with your brother Roger when I had lunch at Lake Breeze, and it is just excellent. So if anyone wants to sort of stay in the reasonably big red territory but try something new, the Malbec is just sensational. But moving on to wine number 3, I think we're actually keeping pace here really well. So pat on the back for us, Greg. So we're on to.
Does that mean I'm not talking enough? Do I need to talk more?
No. You're doing really, really well.
Can do a
if
dance
anyone
or a
wants
song.
Greg to talk more, you just pop that in the chat, and I will just keep the questions coming. Lovely. Someone has said, whoop, whoop. We'll definitely be adding this one to our weekly purchase. Another person said, an absolute bargain, triple exclamation mark. Peter, I couldn't agree more. So on to the Cabernet, the third wine for tonight. So this is the 2018 Cabernet. We will talk about the 19, which is the big points, a little bit later, and about that comparison. But yeah, please tell us all about this, because it's the flagship wine, would you say?
I think Cabernet is definitely the best variety that we grow here in Langhorne Creek. I mean, we do Shiraz as well, but so does about 25 other regions around Australia. Whereas I think if you talk Cabernet, obviously people talk Margaret River and they talk Coonawarra, maybe Yarra Valley, but we think our Cabernets stand up here consistently as well year on year. I mean, this is generally off of 50-year plus vines that Dad planted in the late 60s and early 70s that we're using here. And also there are old Grenache, which we've just looked at there. They're 90 years old now. So not quite as old as those old girls. But Cabernet, as I said, it's the best thing we do. We have another reserve wine here called the Arthur's Reserve, which is a Cabernet Malbec Petit Verdot blend, which I think is the best wine we do year on year. But this here is probably our most awarded wine these days. Just wine shows over the last 10 years or so, well, probably longer than that, 15 years or so, sort of dating back to the early 2000s. We've had an excellent run with this. I sort of touched a little bit on before, like on making the wine. It's similar to the Bernoota in a lot of ways. We'll select some of the Cabernet will go into Americano. It doesn't quite, I don't think it's quite good enough to get towards our straight Cabernet. But our best blocks will maybe spend a few more days on skins, but normally I'm not looking at extended maceration on skins. We're only looking at sort of 10 to 12 days on skins, straight into barrel at that point to finish the fermentation, finish malolactic. I mean, all our wines don't have any fining or filtration. So literally they're spending 20 months in those barrels, and we're doing what we call racking. So after malolactic fermentation, we rack maybe May, June to take the clear off the thick, the yeast lees. Top a couple of months later, rack again in October. Look at another topping, another few toppings, and then we're blending in June, July. The blended component goes back together for 3 or 4 months, and then we look at bottling without any fining or filtration in sort of December the following year. So fairly simple winemaking in a lot of ways. We're really, not that I'm anti-additive, but there's really very little additives that I look. And I think when I talk to all the salesmen who come here trying to sell me all these tannins and enzymes and fining agents and stuff, it's basically they're there to fix things up, which are when there's problems in the vineyard, you're trying to hide something. But I think I'm just really lucky with the fruit that we have that's not required.
That's great. How long have you been on fining, unfiltering for?
Well, I've never had a filter here, so you call it lazy winemaking or something. But generally they're spending that time. I think Langhorne Creek, the beauty is, and if you're picking it right, is if you get tannins that are ripe, you're not needing to fine. If you've got those old vines, they tend to have those lovely ripe tannins. Sometimes off the young vineyards, you've got to get them super ripe because there's that greenness in the tannin. And the seeds and that there. But if the vine's in balance, as they do become naturally as they get older, we don't seem to find. And if they're spending 20 months in a barrel, there's natural amount of porosity in the barrel. There's oxygen getting in there, so they're just but they don't need it at the end of the day. So I'm not going to add anything there that's not required.
That's great. Peter said that he enjoyed a 2005 Lake Breeze Cabernet last week, and wow, what a wine. So what's that? It's like a 16-year-old wine. I guess that's a good segue into aging capability.
Absolutely. Well, if he had a 2004, that's probably the greatest vintage we ever made. And probably 2004, 2012, that question might come up later on, my favourite vintages. But the 04, I think, will live for another 20 years. So that was the first year we went to screw cap. So we had a little bit of cork and a little bit of screw caps. We did a little bit of a 50-50, unsure how everyone would take it, but the screw cap is certainly here to stay.
Absolutely. Lots of great comments coming in about that one. My question was obviously the 2019, what did it get, like 200 points? 97, I think. Very impressive. I'm really lucky. I got to try both of those wines side by side. I know what my favorite is, and I thought I could sort of distinguish the difference between those wines, that maybe the 2019 had touch more power, bit more grunt, and the 2018, this one we're drinking, this is more my style. It's just a little bit prettier, touch lighter, more sort of agility, if that's the right word. Please tell me your thoughts on the 18 versus the 19. And by the way, for everyone, the 19 is going to be available, I believe, in about November. But the quicker you buy all of the 2018, the quicker you will get to have access to the 19.
Well, I think it's interesting, like what you said there between the vintages. I mean, part of that is just one's 12 months older than the other. I actually did the same thing because I saw your questions like, I can babble on, but I best have a little look at both of them side by side. And it's off the same fruit, it's from the same winemaker. It's basically had the same process. So there are some similarities between the wines. I mean, the 19, I think this is. I think the 2018 is just as good, to be honest. Didn't get the points, but that's just sometimes how it goes and how it was looking at the time when the judges are looking at it. But the 19, I think, it's looking more floral. The aromatics sort of jump out a little bit more. It's a little bit darker fruited. I think you look here. There's some lovely mid palate flesh in the 18. It's a little bit perhaps more blue and red fruited. So when I say that, it's sort of like that. I suppose you're looking at blueberry mulberry sort of along with some sort of red currant sort of and the classic cassis. But the 19 sort of had a little bit more darker fruit. But there's whilst you said that 19 had some more power, there's such an elegance and perhaps a really lovely length. And it's a beautiful sort of tannin sort of finish on that 19. I think that might have set it apart, but I'd quite happily drink the 18 as well. They're all my babies, I suppose. So I don't want to give one favoritism over the other. But yes, sometimes for whatever reason. I mean, the 19 Cabernet has been, while the wine show system is sort of a little bit disjointed this year. A few of them been cancelled and a couple have been postponed. We did, the 19 Cabernet has, also won a gold medal in our local show and another one just recently as well. So it's obviously up in the Brisbane show before they had to postpone it because COVID shut it down halfway through. It's obviously showing some things that the judges are liking as well and the wine critics, which is nice. I'm not sure if I really answered the question. I babbled on there a bit, but
man, you're talking to the chief babbler. Like, you did very, very well. It's just such a beautiful wine. It sits perfectly for me between medium to full-bodied, and there's elegance, but there's so much fruit and herbaceous notes that sit under that. The tannin and the structure, like, it's there. If you're like looking at it, you're going, oh yeah, I'm seeing that Cabernet structure. But if someone just poured you a glass and you're around a table, there's just a real enjoyability about that wine that I think is great.
That's the thing. I think sometimes, and there was that sort of comment about the desert island Shiraz versus Cabernet. I mean, I'd take Cabernet every day, especially if I was going to be there for a while. Cabernet every day of the week. Cabernet is so much more intrigue for me, and I think the beauty with Langhorne Creek and our Cabernets is there is that drinkability. I mean, people will have a look at that and say, oh wow, that's a great drink now, but they don't realise, unless you've been following us for a while, that these wines age and they age and age and age. It's not, people have perhaps seen some Cabernets sometimes when they're young. They can be, if they haven't got enough fruit there initially, the tannins can be a bit hard. And we talked about those green tannins can be there as well. They can look a bit herbaceous and a bit angular. Sometimes some Cabernets when they're young, and I think that sort of turns people to Shiraz, because Shiraz is generally sort of sweeter fruited and you don't tend to get as many in that sort of with those harder tannins and that, and so it's a bit of an easier drink. But yeah, Cabernet, when it's done well and done right, is such a joy, and it's a joy to make as well.
Is it? Okay. Favorite wine. This is great. We've had 88 people answer this poll, and we are split 33% on the Shiraz, 39% on the Cabernet, so just winning, and then 28% on the Shiraz Cab, which, yeah, it's a pretty even split there, which is great. I might jump over to a couple of extra questions. Thank you, everyone, for sending them through. People are just chatting in the old chat. That's good. That's what it's there for. I've got some more questions over here. Someone was wondering about your approach to vineyard management. So whether organics are possible, that sort of thing, or what sort of management you've got. And it is your brother that manages the vineyard, right?
Yeah, that's right. That's right. I'm not sure if he's listening in before us. I don't think he is, but I do believe his son Tyler might be on. No, yeah. So Tim looks after it. We're definitely not organic at this point, but we're certainly looking at lower inputs. We've been custodians of this land for such a long time, and we want to add the next 5-6 generations. So we're not doing anything here that's going to ruin the land going forward. It might be nice to sort of develop into that down the track. We are looking at, I know we've done this eco vineyards thing that my brother's doing at the moment. We're planting a lot of native plants for biodiversity, getting back sort of some, I suppose, insects and birds and things that used to be here more so to try and help with the pest control and the like. So there's those things that are happening all the time. We're always sort of looking. There's some new varieties we're planting. Obviously, Cabernet, you can see here, Cabernet is our strength, and Cabernet and Shiraz are our strength and our main volume. But we are playing with a few other newer Italian varietals and that, which might be coming on stream in a few years. Just trying to keep up with the Joneses, so to speak. And I think we are lucky to be in a region that's growing grapes. I want to downplay is easy to a degree. We're not on a slope. It's very flat here in Langhorne Creek. The weather conditions are really conducive. So it's anyone could grow. What I'm saying, my brother doesn't do much. It's all the winemaker. It's basically what I'm saying.
Oh, absolutely. He actually said the opposite, but that's cool. To the person who noticed me refilling my glass, yes, I am thirsty. Going to need, something salty soon to get in the mouth, but the Cabernet's going down very, very well. This might be a bit of a random question, but it's from me. So you're selling grapes, people are buying them, and that would be for the Langhorne Creek region overall. And then you've got the producers that are living in the region, making the wines there. Do you see a difference between the winemaking and the end product of the wines, the people that live in the region and those people that are just using it as a source for grapes?
Yes and no. There's certainly, historically, I suppose the bigger producers have used it, and I've certainly in the early days of our winemaking, I saw firsthand. I'll go back. So it might sound like I'm bragging, but I'll go back to my very first vintage, 92, and I was 22 years old and really didn't know what I was doing. Dad didn't even trust me and sent some fruit back to Penfolds where they were making our wine at that point. Sent a batch there, and I was made the other stuff at Bleasdale. And out of the 3 or 4 batches of Cabernet and Shiraz that we did, the stuff that I did myself here was definitely better. But the main thing was we were taking the exact same fruit off. I didn't know the vineyards that well to say which row to pick. We were taking the exact same fruit as they were. We had feedback from Penfolds in that day that they were really disappointed in our 92 wines. There was no bonuses. I think they said it was pretty ordinary vintage, and our 92 wines, the first wines that ever made, we first times we had enough to enter them in the wine shows. The 92 Bernoota ended up runner-up in the Jimmy Watson. We won 12 gold medals, 3 trophies, and literally hardly ended a show, didn't get a gold medal, and it was like, well, holy shit,
Greg, you're good.
What happened there? So I learned early that, if you're actually picking it at the right time and nurturing and really looking after in small batch winemaking, you can make such a difference. I'm not sure what else I was doing, but I haven't really changed much from then. I'm still trying to sort of stick to the same recipe to keep up with I suppose that early show success that we had. But I think it's all dependent. The big companies, there's an element, they take a truckload, goes in a big tank, it's destined for a certain product. There's only so much love they can give it. There's certain blocks that are going to Grange or going to whatever that they're going to give that little bit more love. There are some more newer people, buying fruit at Langhorne Creek now, which hopefully, not saying the big guys can't make some great wines. There's some great Wolf Blass Langhorne Creek Reds, dating back to the early 70s. They were winning Jimmy Watsons with Langhorne Creek Reds in their black labels and that. So it's I'm starting to waffle a little bit here now, but
actually, I'll jump in then. Very quick question. It's a yes or no question. Will you be making or growing or making Nebbiolo?
I saw that come up and I hoped you weren't going to answer.
Oh, sorry. Well, I would say that your region is maybe not suited to Nebbiolo.
Yeah, no, we haven't got. I've got one of my really great mates grows Nebbiolo down here and has a bit of trouble with it. I know from year to year. He makes, when it's good, it's really good, but it's a very difficult variety to grow. We have got a new Nero d'Avola coming out later this year. It's going to be like an earlier drinking sort of lighter medium weight sort of style. So I suppose going with the fashion a little bit, but also with, the amount of people we're getting here in Celador and that now who are looking for just something to have at lunchtime, a glass of something that's not, maybe as heavy. So that's, obviously we've been doing our Vermentino for nearly 10 years now as well. But no, not Nebbiolo.
Okay, so my question then is, if you had a magical wand or some superpower and you could, in the snap of a fingers, create the perfect growing conditions in your vineyard for any variety, what would it be that you don't currently excel at?
It's probably, I don't think we can grow Riesling here. I love Riesling, and it's probably automatically, getting a little bit of altitude. Going from our 0 meters above 0 to 5 meters above sea level to 300 or 400, and getting slightly colder winter to get a better dormancy and stuff to be able to get those aromatic whites. So it'd probably be that would be the answer.
Nice. Makes me think if I've got the capacity to grow any grapevines in my very urban backyard here in Richmond, there's probably no chance of getting through the concrete to actually plant any vines. So I might go for some ornamental grapevines. They look nice when you're having your lunch. We're nearly at time. Wow, we've gotten through a lot. We've gotten through our 3 wines, so much information, and you've been so generous, Greg, with, everything about the region. You certainly are a champion for the Langhorne Creek wine region, and a great representative of Lake Breeze. I think we've covered most of the questions. I'm just going to have a little, this is a good one. Any noticeable changes in the weather patterns in the last 20 years? Rain, sun, etc. Is noble rot a possibility because of the lake? Might make that the last question for the night.
Yeah, absolutely. We've definitely seen changes. I'll get the noble rot thing out the way. We don't have any issues with botrytis. Is a really rare problem here to have, and to try and do it, you'd have to create it to make a noble rot sort of sweet style. So that's sort of out of the question. But certainly, even I suppose in my time making wines here from the early 90s, it's probably what's happened is the season has shifted forward 2 or 3 weeks. Even we sort of look, bud burst is almost a bit earlier. We're looking at September, October being drier, and November being like December used to be. It's almost like the whole cycle's moved forward 2 or 3 weeks, where we tend to pick, whereas we used to pick the last half of March and all through April. Now the month of March is our big, we do still cooler years. Like last year, we were picking all the way through the end of April here. But yeah, generally we see vintages have come forward. Probably the biggest issue, obviously, with the things that we talk about here in the district from climate change is those one-off madly hot, stupid days, the 45-degree days and that, which are probably the biggest issue that I think we face down here. We're fortunate the heat waves aren't such an issue. We tend to get those cooling breezes still that tend to help us here. But yeah, the biggest issue we have is trying to deal with those one-off 45 degrees days, which can have a real bad effect on the vines. But we're plugging away, and then, as I said, playing around with a few of these different Mediterranean varieties as well. And who knows in 20, 30 years what will be growing here. But I'm hopeful that the old Cabernet will still be hanging in there, and I'll still be hanging in as well.
Well, all the best to both of you. I do have, okay, I'm going to slide in 2 more questions and then I'm going to call it quits. You can have their very quick answers. Someone has said, how about trying Zin? So Zinfandel for anyone.
Yeah, not a big fan of Zin, I must say.
Yeah, that's fine. Yep, not a big fan. What was the other one? This is a great question. Other wines that you enjoy drinking?
Yeah, it's probably, I sort of go back to, like, if we look at what comes out of the fridge at home, it's white wines are, might sound a bit boring, as Riesling and Chardonnay, and Riesling's from anywhere, but mainly Clare. And yeah, from a red wine aspect, yeah, I'm starting to drink, more Grenache sort of style, lighter sort of mid-weight sort of styles. Obviously enjoy Cabernets still. And if there's a dinner party happening, it's always, you're delving into those lovely old Cabernets and the like.
For sure. Wow, 7:29 Victoria time. We've absolutely nailed it, Greg. Pat on the back to you. Pat on the back to me, because we have covered so much content, and I hope everyone's, had their questions answered and got a really good insight into Lake Breeze and the Langhorne Creek wine region. We do have a little promo code from Vinomofo that we would like to share with everybody if you are feeling thirsty and would like to pick up any style of wine for our website. But if, like me, you feel like you've been to the top of the mountain and you're only going to drink Lake Breeze from now on in, then jump on the Lake Breeze website, sign up to their Duck Club, and you can be drinking beautiful Lake Breeze wines every day of the week. But of course, I do buy the wines from Vinomofo, and we do have a great selection. So we've got the promo code there, and we will send everyone out an email either tonight or tomorrow morning, thanking you and making sure that you've got that promo code for your online shopping. Yes, any final closing words from Langhorne Creek, Greg?
Go the Langhorne Creek Hawks this weekend in the grand final. Going for the 4-peat, 4 in a row in the A-grade grand final. So I would say that. And if anyone's got, obviously there's questions, and if anyone wants to, shoot us a line, an email, or through the website or something. We're happy to. Robin's just scowling at me now across here, but because she'll have to answer them. But happy to answer any questions. We're very, very approachable and here. So thanks everyone for your time tonight, and hope you enjoyed it. And you've possibly all got 3 bottles open, so you can enjoy the next hour or 2 as well, at least.
Absolutely. Someone who works with me helped me figure out how to kick all these people out of my lounge room. That was just so fantastic, Greg. Cannot wait to get back to Langhorne Creek and stay on the property, maybe even camping if you'll let me and some mates camp, near the vines, and just have a long lunch and in that great weather you've got, and enjoy all the wines in situ again. Yeah, because it's just such a special place. Fantastic. So have a good night, everybody. And all the best for the next.
Thanks, guys. I do the Zoom wave now.
Do the Zoom wave, the double hands, the very excited Zoom wave. Awesome. Thank you so much, everybody. And thank you, Greg.